Trae Young. We all on notice.
Trae going to work.
Overrated the chant right now.
What's goody? It's your host J Rose as always, and let's be real about Trae Young. In my opinion, Trae Young is one of the best point guards in the NBA today, but the general consensus does not agree with me on that one. I feel like Trae Young is one of the most overhated players in the NBA, and not for a good reason either. He's been forced into the villain role very early into his career, and that's definitely hindered him, and he's gotten snubbed from things like the All-Star game and even the Team USA roster, which I think is very, very interesting. Even though he's an upper tier point guard, in my opinion, I think he's in the upper echelon of guards and deserves to get the respect, but he just doesn't get it. A lot of his peers that are on the same skill level of him get the respect that he doesn't, and I want to know why that is. Trae Young is one of the most hated players in the NBA for one reason or another, not even amongst only fans, but coaches as well seem to not like Trae Young, which has led him to be left off a couple of All-Star spots, but we'll get to that later. Some reasons I've seen for not liking Trae Young include his playstyle. A lot of people feel like he foul baits, and I can understand not liking that playstyle, but those are the same people that like players like James Harden and Luka Doncic, who frankly do the same thing. Whether it's to the same degree, a little less, a little more, they all do that somewhat. Joel Embiid also does that. LeBron James also does that. It's a part of the game of basketball at this point, and I feel like giving Trae Young so much hate for that is very disingenuous, especially if you're fans of a lot of these other players. Some other people also call Trae Young a Steph Curry clone, which literally makes absolutely no sense. If you say Trae Young is a Steph Curry clone, you either don't watch Steph Curry, don't watch Trae Young, or both, because they do not play alike at all. Steph Curry's game is based on a lot of off-ball movement and screens, while Trae Young is a lot more on-ball. He doesn't really move off-ball at all, and a lot more playmaking-centric than you would be led to believe if you just listen to that statement. A lot of people also say that Trae Young is overrated, which I struggle to find out how that makes sense, because if you think he's overrated, and you think he's overrated, and you think he's overrated, that literally means that none of you think he's up to snuff, which would make him not overrated at that point. The same thing happened when Damian Lillard was coming up and he got snubbed off an All-Star game and everyone's calling him underrated. If all of you think he's underrated, then how can he be underrated? He's no longer on that radar. In order to be considered overrated, there has to be a group of people that are overrating him. If everybody thinks he's overrated, that's gonna actually make him become underrated at some point, especially because he's actually good. I feel like he was forced into being a villain in the NBA very early on for no good reason, honestly. The only team or fan base that I'll give the pass for hating Trae Young is the New York Knicks, because he absolutely did y'all dirty. Every other team in the NBA, I'm not entirely sure why you would hate him. There's nothing to really hate there. In terms of play style, Trae Young is one of the best scorers in the league, and like I said earlier, one of the best playmakers in the league. While not the most athletic, his skill work definitely is exciting. His handles are eccentric, his playmaking is great. He makes lob threats, real threats on the court. He throws lobs from all over the place, and it's amazing. He can shoot from deep. Even inside, he's one of the better finishers for his stature. He's a very small guard, so him finishing inside as well as he does is very impressive. Averaging 27 points and 9 assists over the last 4 seasons should be enough to be considered one of the best point guards in the league, but for some reason, Trae Young just doesn't get that same respect. I'm going to put 2 players on the screen right now, and I'm going to ask you guys, which one do you think made the All-Star game and which one missed it? These 2 players are Ja Morant and Trae Young, who I think are very close in skill, but the general sentiment in the NBA community is that Ja is somewhere up here, Trae is somewhere down here, which I just don't agree with. Even though Trae has more playoff success, he's won more games, and he also blew up a lot faster than Ja Morant did. Even though Ja still did it fast, Trae Young in his second year averaged 29 points and 9.3 assists. As a sophomore, those are some insane numbers. And to be fair, in his best seasons, he made the All-Star games, but he only has 1 All-NBA appearance, which I think is weird considering how good his numbers looked some of these seasons. I would also like to point out that the numbers I showed you for comparison is Trae Young on an off year. His jump shot wasn't hitting as much. His percentages went down this season, trying to adjust to DeJounte Murray on his roster. So the fact that his numbers still look that elite on an off season is amazing. Very impressive from Trae. Honestly, Ja Morant was probably the tip of the iceberg. Trae Young also didn't make it over Tyrese Halliburton and Jrue Holiday, who are both in his conference. If you know me and you watch my videos, you know I like Reese. I'm very high on Reese, but he's not on the level of Trae Young yet at all, and even the numbers last year show that. I just don't think Jrue Holiday is in those same tier with those guys either. I think Jrue Holiday is a role player, honestly, but either way, Trae Young was better than both of these guys as well and did not make it. He also is a great leader on the floor, and as a number one option, he's been to a conference final already, and he almost went to the NBA Finals. He was one game away from going to the NBA Finals and knocking the Bucks off. Isn't that insane? I think that's crazy for a player that doesn't get this kind of recognition and is looked at as a lower tier point guard in the NBA right now amongst a lot of fans. In terms of winning, the Hawks are going to make the playoffs almost every single year if Trae's at the helm because he's just that good. He has more success than almost anybody you can think of. Even the recent MVP, Joel Embiid, he beat him in the playoffs and got farther than Joel Embiid's ever gotten. The only box he doesn't check off is defense, and a lot of your favorite players don't play defense either, so I can't really use that as an excuse. There's a very short list of players that have averaged 29 points and 9 assists, and Trae Young's on it. That list includes 4 players: Oscar Robertson, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden in the same season, and Trae Young. So he's already achieved some historic feats in his short career. I just find it crazy that a player who's only 5 seasons into his career and has shown some great basketball can be hated this much. Trae also can't seem to make a Team USA roster, which I think is weird considering how good he is. And this is not the Olympics. If it were the Olympics, I'd understand, because the Olympics is where the best of the best come out to play. And that's where you see the KDs, the Damian Lillards, players like that. But on this team, this is not the Olympics. These are just summer international games. You're going to see players like Brandon Ingram. You see Anthony Edwards. You see Tyrese Halliburton. You see Jalen Brunson. And Trae Young would not only be the best guard on this team, I think he'd be the best player on this team. So I think it's really weird that he's struggling to make this roster. He couldn't beat out Jalen Brunson, Austin Reeves, and Tyrese Halliburton for a spot. They didn't really even give him a chance, and I think that's really disingenuous. It really does show the politics and the bias behind the basketball, because from a basketball standpoint, he would be one of, if not the best player on that Team USA team. So I do find it a little weird that he's getting snubbed from that at the very least. I think he would be able to make that. Trae Young is absolutely not only one of the best guards in the NBA right now, but one of the best players. He absolutely deserves way more respect than he gets, and honestly, I hope he proves all of his haters wrong, so y'all can put some respect on Trae Young's name. Hopefully I shed some light on Trae and maybe changed your opinion on him, because he really is a great player. I hope a lot more people go into next season, check him out, and maybe he'll get some more fans. This series has mostly been me complaining about players and their deficiencies or what they're doing wrong at the moment, so I'm definitely glad to come on here and shed some light on a player that I feel like does not get it otherwise. Outside of Atlanta, the Trae Young hate train is way bigger than the amount of people that like him, and I really don't understand it. So hey, if you guys can tell me why you hate Trae Young down in the comments, let me know, but hopefully I could change your mind, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.